Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today, focusing on some specific source material you brought. It touches on that really widely debated topic, the claims about no-go zones in Sweden.
Yeah, exactly. And the source we're looking at, it's an audio clip, an excerpt from Infowars.com. It really zeroes in on one journalist's experience, his firsthand account when he went to check things out in Sweden.
Right, and it's useful to remember the background here. This whole discussion, this source, it kind of popped up after those comments by Donald Trump about problems in Sweden.
Hmm.
And there was a huge reaction to that online, in the media, lots of disagreement.
For sure. So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive is really just to stick to this source. We want to pull out and understand exactly what this recording tells us about that journalist trip to a Swedish suburb.
And crucially, how that specific story, his account, is presented and, well, interpreted within that recording itself.
Precisely. So according to this recording, the setup is basically Donald Trump makes a comment about issues in Sweden. And the source describes the left reacting really strongly on social media, interpreting what he said in a specific way.
Okay, so that's the source's framing of the reaction.
Right. And then the source says Paul Joseph Watson jumped in to counter that. He's described in the recording's narrative anyway as pointing to actual fact about problems in migrant areas, the existence of dangerous areas.
And the source claims the, quote, left, quote, freaked out at him for saying that.
That's what the source states, yeah. And this, according to the recording, led Paul Joseph Watson to challenge a journalist, basically go see for yourself.
And he even offered money to help fund it.
Offered to help fund the trip, yeah.
Okay, so who took him up on it?
A journalist named Tim P. He accepted the challenge, partly funded by Watson. And according to this Infowars source, Tim P. spent about a week over there.
Doing what exactly?
Conducting interviews, visiting these migrant suburbs. The stated goal, as the source puts it, was to get an accurate picture of what is happening.
Where did he go? Does the source specify?
It highlights one location in particular, Rinkeby. And the source makes sure to note that Rinkeby had recently been the scene of riots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it mentions things like cars being set ablaze, attacks on journalists, shopkeepers, police officers, kind of setting the stage, you know?
Definitely paints a picture. So what about the actual events? What did Tim P. say happened during his visit, according to this recording?
Okay, so Tim P. reportedly said they were with the police at the time, and they were specifically not filming anyone.
Just talking.
Just talking to the police officers, yeah. That's the account.
But things didn't stay calm.
Apparently not. According to Tim P.'s account in the source, the police started getting nervous. Why? Because men started masking up around us.
Masking up. Wow, okay.
What else? And these men, they started staring at Tim P. and the people he was with, talking amongst themselves.
So intimidating behavior, basically.
That seems to be the implication. The source describes the police as becoming scared, and then very calmly, very quietly advising Tim P. and his group, it would be smart if you were to leave right now.
Just like that. Did they explain why?
Well, according to the source, yes. An officer apparently told Tim P. something like, look around at what people were doing.
Okay.
And the reason the police gave for needing to leave, the quote in the source is, if we make an arrest right now, there could be 50 people here in minutes with stones.
Whoa. 50 people with stones. That's quite specific.
It is. That's the quote provided in the source. So a clear suggestion of potential violence or unrest if things escalated.
So what happened then? Did they just walk out?
As they were walking out, the source quotes Tim P. saying, people started following us.
Following them. Okay, that sounds unsettling.
Yeah. And the police then escorted them to their car and they drove away from the area.
And the source mentions the camera again.
Right. Tim P. is quoted again emphasizing they only had one small camera and they weren't even pointing it at anyone during this whole interaction.
Okay, so that's the sequence of events as reported by Tim P. within this source material. Now, the crucial part, how does the source itself interpret this? What conclusion does it draw?
It's very direct. Immediately after recounting Tim P.'s experience, the source audio just states, so there's your no-go zone.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it labels that experience, that specific incident, as the definition or proof of a no-go zone.
Exactly. And the source actually goes on to offer its specific definition of no-go zone right there, based on this. It clarifies, look, it doesn't mean you literally cannot walk there, but quoting the source again, it means you go into that zone and people are going to look at you and apparently start masking up and following you around if you don't look, or I guess if you aren't a part of their community.
So the definition here is tied to feeling unwelcome, being visually identified as an outsider, and that triggering these specific actions, masking up, following.
That's the definition presented in this source, derived directly from that one reported event. And the source immediately connects it back to the initial challenge,
Yeah.
saying this is exactly what Paul Joseph Watson said would happen. And the conclusion drawn right there in the audio is that, based on this, Paul Joseph Watson was proven right.
Okay. And what about Tim P. himself, the journalist? How did he reportedly react to this whole thing, according to the source anyway?
Well, the source includes his reaction, too. Tim P. reportedly said something like, I honestly thought we would be totally safe to go in there and ask people what life was like.
So he was surprised.
He stated quite clearly, according to the source, I really didn't expect that to happen.
Interesting that the source includes his surprise. It sort of adds to the narrative, doesn't it?
It does. And then the source kind of wraps up its commentary with a prediction.
What does it predict? Silence from the critics.
You got it. It anticipates crickets from all the people that gave Donald Trump a hard time about his Sweden comment.
Hmm.
And the recording finishes by reiterating the point. The left supposedly thought Paul Joseph Watson would end up looking foolish, but actually, according to the source, he was proven absolutely right by Tim P's experience.
Okay, so we've walked through the details presented in this specific audio source. Taking that step back, what does this deep dive into this specific piece show you, the listener?
Well, I think what's really striking, what's fascinating here is how the source operates. It takes this single reported event, the journalist's specific experience in Rinkeby,
Yeah.
and presents it as just clear, definitive evidence, like case closed, evidence supporting this much broader, much more contentious claim about no-go zones.
And it defines that term no-go zone
Yeah.
almost entirely through the lens of that one specific incident, masking up, following, feeling unwelcome.
Exactly. So it really highlights one particular way that complex, really debated issues get discussed, how claims are asserted as proven within certain media contexts, often using a personal story, a single account, as the main validation.
Right. And looking just at this source, not making wider claims ourselves, but looking at the source, it really prompts you to think about that connection. The relationship between one individual's reported experience, however real or impactful for them, and the sweeping generalizations that a source might then build on top of it.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap what we've unpacked from this particular Infowars.com audio source, we heard the narrative about a journalist's trip to Rinkeby, Sweden.
We heard about the specific events reported, the men masking up, the police warning about stones being followed out.
And critically, how this source interpreted all of that, how it used that experience to define and declare the existence of a no-go zone, concluding that Paul Joseph Watson was proven absolutely right.
Right. Okay, so here's maybe a final thought for you to chew on, building directly from how this source framed things. The source defines a no-go zone not by, physical walls or actual laws saying don't enter, but by this reported experience, the feeling of being an unwelcome outsider based on how you look, your perceived community affiliation, leading to these specific alleged reactions like masking up and following. So thinking about that specific definition presented in this source, what does defining a contentious term like no-go zone through the lens of that kind of personal subjective experience mean for how we understand or perceive safety, community, and belonging in different urban areas?